Welcome to United Way Community Connections. We're glad you joined us, and my guest today is a good friend for a long time, Stephen Bradley, who is with the Kids Company 2 Family Resource Center at McNabb. And Stephen, we go a long way back, and we're going to do some going back and talking about things that we first, United Way first worked with you all on. And this is mainly emerging needs, but since we've started this, United Way has narrowed our focusing to 3 focus areas, and number 1 is education and care of children, which all of your programs do. The other one, strengthening families, which your programs fit right into that, and then meeting emergency needs and crisis prevention. So let's talk about some of the first areas that we worked on with you and funded partially for your program.
Once again, June, thanks for having us
Glad to have
today
you, Stephen, always.
Representing the city schools, as well as we'll be talking with about the county schools and also faith-based schools, because we invited them to be also involved in some of our programs. But when you mentioned that just a minute ago, in 1998, I think, and maybe just a little bit before, actually the first program we started with through United Way was writing a grant for educational incentive program, and that was called the Knights Renaissance Program. I forgot about that until you just mentioned that. And that was basically for our, at that time, 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. One of the ladies in the county schools and myself wrote that grant, and we were fortunate to be funded. And if a child, the main focus was on attendance, but we actually used grades. If they had A's and B's and no absences, which is what we were after, then they had some nice incentives that we were able to provide either through the grant money through the United Way, the Family Resource Centers, and maybe a little bit of money through PTO or places like that.
Yeah, and I think you got some donations, but it really makes a difference to kids, and I never realized that before, that they want things to show off that I did this.
Yes,
and,
they
and
do.
So that made that difference.
Last year, we've continued that program, as I said, for almost 8 years now, and we were able to take, I think, 60 out of 180 kids in our now 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and our finale is going to Venture River, which is really what they like the most.
They love that.
Besides the incentives they get. But that meant that probably 60 of those kids had the grades, had not been absent from school at all, at least 2 or maybe 3 out of the 4 quarters of the grading periods.
So did you see an increase in their attendance from their prior records?
Yes, and we've been keeping up with those statistics. I didn't bring those today. I didn't think about it until just a minute ago, but it has increased from like maybe 2 kids had all A's and B's the first time that we started the program to maybe now 12 having A's and B's at any grade at any given time.
So that really makes a difference for them, and so if they're in school, they're learning something.
That's
so
right.
That's a good positive, and that's really what we're after, is making that improvement in not only kids' lives but their families' lives.
That's
because
right.
They're more aware of the need to send their children to school.
And that's what happens sometimes. Is a lot of the children, they may want to go to school, but either the parent doesn't see that as a real important thing, or maybe the kid acts like they're sick besides being.
And they can do that
yes,
too.
They can.
Pretty well, first-hand experience.
We've worked on that as in, if they're sick, well then they need a doctor's excuse. And we're doing real well with that.
That's
and the
wonderful.
Parents, of course, they like to know that their children have done well and that they get those little rewards or incentives.
That's special too. Yes, it is. Well, that one was I think one of the very first
That was,
now
that we think about it.
Yeah.
And then pretty shortly thereafter, we start into the strengthening the families, which we were actually doing that before, the United Way has changed their focus just a little bit. But that was called Building Successful Families. And that's basically a parenting program. And I think I've mentioned this before in some of our discussions, that a lot of times we'll expect our parents to go to a workshop or a parenting program that's 16 weeks. More than likely, you and I are not going to go to 16 weeks.
No, we won't.
We may go 6 weeks, and that's what this program was about. And so it was called Active Parenting, and United Way was gracious enough to award that program and fund it. And then we bought parenting books, and we developed a mini workshop for parents through social services. Once again, the Lone Oak Family Resource Center and then Kids Company 2 was basically the three agencies on that. And we would do workshops with the parents, at the same time having little classes with the children, talking about behavior, fun activities, school programs. We just worked it all in with that. So we've done that one for several years.
That, I think, is in our Voices assessment that we did, finished in 2005, that one of the greatest needs was for parenting education and working with the parents to get them to understand what their children are doing and to be a part of it, because there's nothing little kids love any better than having their parents involved in what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so that's one good way of hitting both of it at one time.
One of the ways we also did that was through the parent and child activity. Like one time we had a parenting class. It was during Halloween, so they got to paint pumpkins and then take those home. So, you know, we also gave them some kind of reward for going to the parenting program on that.
Well, and the parents need that, and because you and I both know this is totally foreign to many, many parents that and their children. Children don't know what it is to have support at home and a follow-up there, and to be able to do real fun things, because parents are working 2-3 jobs, and sometimes the kids' homework and the kids' school activities get kind of pushed behind.
Yes, and you know what happens on that a lot of times is some of our parents, we don't have classes on how to be a parent, as you said, you know. And then with life experiences and problems that we all face, or that some of us unfortunately have more than others, then it is very difficult in raising children, being a parent. As you said, mixing it all up of
we take
homework.
for granted that everybody knows how to be a parent. Not true, and that's some of the things that that we need to give them the tools to work with on a fun type basis, but yet you're still learning, and hopefully a lot of that is carrying through right now to the after years, and I know you all had a good time in doing it, and I think right now would be a good time, because you've mentioned in both cases somebody else partnering with you. This is not the city schools out there alone. It's not the county schools alone. You all are working so well together in these areas, because parents and kids are the same, whether they live in the county or whether they live in the city school system.
And that's a very good point, that even in some of these trainings that we've presented at different places, the kids are all the same. Parents are all the same. We all have the same problems, as you said. But on the emerging needs, as you mentioned, we've been very fortunate in the Paducah McCracken County community that we're a close-knit community, I think. And so we all are working for the betterment of our families and our children there. And several agencies do go together, such as what I mentioned earlier, the social services and the county family resource system, as well as the school system. And then I also mentioned earlier about the faith-based school systems that we always invite them to some of the programs that, matter of fact, we'll be talking about in just a minute.
Okay. Well, I know that I never have to worry about any of the programs that you do, because I always get pictures and a good report, and I think that's as important. What results did you get? And some of the funding that we've done, we don't get as detailed. So I appreciate that, because at any one time I can take out your notebook, your pictures, your reports coming back, and know exactly how many sets of parents came, how many children. And that's important, the results, because our overall goal is to improve people's lives in our community, and you're certainly giving us a lot of evidence that that's happening, and that's important.
And I think that's important. That's an important point for us who might be writing a grant, that you do have to produced the results. Or if the results weren't there, then you need to mention that too.
Yes, so let's don't get into that. We won't do this program again,
right.
And because as long as it's working and the funding is there, then we hope to be able to fund some of these outside our regular agency funding that we do on an ongoing basis. So I think the children, their lives, in my mind, is so important right now, because if we don't get the kids right now at the young age and work with them and know that they're going to be able to move up in their grades and finish high school and then be a productive citizen in our community. That's what we're looking for.
That's right. I think they say that the developmental ages is like from 0 to 6, but by the time that 3, 4, 5 years of age there, that development has already been set.
Yes.
So it's so important, as you said, to start early.
And that's one of the reasons that I'm always so excited when your grants come across my desk, because I can truly say that your programs have been, and your co-workers and those in the county also, you have family resource workers have a lot of sharing to do. You have a lot of needs that are exactly the same.
Right.
And if you can band together and put together one program instead of putting 4 or 5 together,
right.
And so I think that really makes a great deal of
and
difference.
And we're a very unique group in regards to Family Resource Youth Service Centers, that we sort of borrow things from each other, ideas from each other.
Yeah.
We do combine programs and ideas to maybe develop into one, because maybe we may be doing it one way at McNabb, and someone else in the county at Reland may be doing something similar, where if we combined our efforts, and we've done that in the past with summer camps and some other activities.
Well, and it's good to have those folks involved too, because it sort of extends you and the other, when you put together 2 or 3 staff folks, your ideas and your physical work, basically getting it done, because it puts more of you out there. And I know I have attended some of your sessions.
Yes, you did.
Had just been so excited about that, and I think now is the book here, Preventing Bullying at School, and I think this has been in the limelight for so many years, and a lot of it has been ignored.
Right.
And you all have addressed that. So let's talk about the no bullying part of the program.
The no bullying is probably one of the largest grants and met the emerging needs, as in community collaboration, because it involved the police department, the United Way, the social services, the school systems, the faith-based, I said, mental health, was invited to some of those sessions. But anyway, we wrote a grant through United Way and actually the Drug Council and the Family Resource. Those were the 3 main partners. And in 2002, September 2002, and we brought in a national trainer. That was something I thought it was important. We all, as we have the book here over on the table there, we all can talk about no bullying, or we can read materials on it, but I thought it was also important to bring in a trainer on that one, and that's what we did, and invited the various agencies that I mentioned, and to learn about the no bullying curriculum through Hazelton. And that's
Hazelton's always a good program for anything.
It has been, I think so, and it really has been for us.
Yeah.
It's the no bullying that we were working on is basically for elementary, also through middle school, but we were really just focusing on our elementary students. Maybe a 9 weeks course is what it basically does, and it involves your students from kindergarten to 5th grade, as in signs of bullying, how to deal with bullying behaviors, what they can do if they're in that situation, so learning the differences between tattling and telling on someone. So it's a pretty full curriculum. It's sort of like a cookbook, how to discuss these things with the children. One of my commitments from that time of developing that grant was to also we train the little kindergartners at our school. Different family resource centers will have either parent volunteers or the coordinator, Stephanie Reese from Lone Oak. She, I think, actually does the workshops with the 5th graders. So we all have a different way of doing it. Mine's with kindergartners, someone else is with 5th graders, and then once again, one of our most valuable resources is parent volunteers.
Well, so in other words, with the parent volunteers, you train them to do or to watch for, how to watch for that, or do they do the training?
They do the actual training.
How wonderful.
And that's something I didn't mention is what the United Way did for us was we combined all of our resources. So we bought a no bullying curriculum, which was quite expensive. I think they're about $250 a curriculum. And we bought that for each family resource center, and I think maybe one per school or one per guidance counselor, and that way all the city schools, county schools, and at that time the two faith-based schools, then they received one of the curriculums.
Okay.
And then hopefully it was up to them if they instituted the curriculum.
Yeah. Basically, what do you look for in bullying? Say in a kindergartner, what would you say to them, or what would you look for in your school?
That's a good question, because actually what you're looking for, or what you're going to see, you're not looking for, it's just going to happen, you know, is a child who maybe is hitting, kicking, you know, we all do certain things like that. But sometimes the children who are very aggressive, you know, we're looking for signs of it, because there's actually physical, emotional, and social. Those are the 3 types of bullying behaviors that you get into. And then each one of those have different levels. But that basic one would be just like punching and kicking and hitting. And then the emotional would be where they're name calling. And the social would be being maybe isolated by the group. You know.
And we see that all the way through.
Your clothes are funny, or your hair it looks funny, or whatever.
Or maybe a disabled child that
making fun of a person with a disability, sure. And once again, those little classes, you know, because what's real interesting, you start on a building foundation, and also one of the things that you do is after you've identified those behaviors, and the children really identifies them first. That's one of the first things I do is, you know, I'll say, what do you think a bully does? And they talks about getting shooting, and little kindergarten will talk about shooting, or which really is concerned, because that's one of the first things they're mentioning nowadays is being shot or something.
Yeah. That's, you know, when you think of little kindergartens, that's sad.
Sure is.
To think that that's on their mind, but they see it on TV, they hear about it all the time, and but it can take a more subtle form, can't it? When I know one of my staff folks has a son in middle school that last year was bullied.
Right.
And she tried to work with his teachers, and but it's sometimes so subtle that the teachers are not aware, and the kid's afraid to tell.
And that's another good point that you made is in regards to it's sort of a community effort.
Sure it is.
You know, it starts with the children, the parents, the teachers themselves, you know, to be aware of it, or to maybe be more aware of it, as well as our own community, you know, the police department, whoever it may be.
Well, and sometimes we turn our back. We say, oh, that's just kids. You know how kids will do. But sometimes it goes beyond the having fun and teasing a lot, because if it happens all the time, it can really do things to a child's esteem, and they begin to think, well, I'm nothing.
Right. And it also leads into a person maybe who's been bullied, then they're going to grow up in that, and then they become a bully themselves, you know.
And that is, well, it's just sort of like an alcoholic. Sometimes you think, if I live in it, I will never take a drink, but that doesn't happen a lot of times. So
1 in 7, I think, is what the statistic says, and it's probably a little bit even more than that, but 1 in 7 children are bullied. That was from one of the national surveys that the Hazelton group.
1 in 7. that is so frightening. And when you think that's your children, that's your grandchildren, you really want to learn more about it. And I know I was watching television the other night, and in prime time on our Connecting with Kids on the TV channel locally, they did a no bullying that was very well done, and it called my attention to it over again, how dangerous it really can be, and how we as individuals need to step up and say, this is not going to be tolerated.
Right.
So this is one of the programs then that I think I was probably more excited about than anything
Right.
we had done to that date, because I was actually involved in attending the session. Very well done by the fellow that came down
Yeah.
from Hazelden, and so this is something that we probably need to do on an ongoing basis in our no bullying, and just keep it at the forefront of teachers and the students themselves and with their parents.
And matter of fact, we'll talk about that in just a little bit. From that no bullying, we're still doing some of that. We're actually still writing some grants, but it's taking sort of a different course, which
Yeah.
we'll mention a little bit. The 2 years later, after the 202 and 204, we identified another emerging need, and that was helping teachers to deal with children with classroom behaviors. And that was where we wrote a grant for, and actually that grant happened by me calling Hazelden and saying, is there anything that you have that follows up the no bullying that we did? And so their suggestion was, oh yes, we have this, is called the Good Behavior Game. And that was the second emerging needs grant that we wrote 2 years after the no bullying.
Mm-hmm.
And there, once again, we brought a professional trainer in, national trainer, who actually had developed this. The no bullying, the Good Behavior Game has actually been around for 40 years. But then through scientific studies, through revamping it, and I think he was the latest person to revamp it, then it's now called the PAX Good Behavior Game.
Okay, well tell us about that then. What did that do as a follow-up, and how did it reinforce the no bullying?
What we did with that one is, as I mentioned earlier, we had invited community people, agencies. Well, with the Good Behavior Game, we invited teachers, guidance counselors who were right there at the front end, and the first person that's dealing with that classroom.
Yes.
That I have a lot of respect for. You know,
Yes.
I can come and go, and those
Yeah.
teachers have got the responsibility for that
Yeah.
child for 7 hours a day
Yeah.
there. But anyway, it basically gives the teacher an opportunity to like count how many disruptions they have in the classroom, and to do some figuring on that, and then to start working with the children as in teams to modify some of those behaviors. And for example, the team that will then have the less a number of behaviors, then they may get, once again, one of those little rewards of
yeah.
whatever
Mm-hmm.
candy, or maybe it's not a candy because we're supposed to be healthy, but whatever kind of reward
Yeah.
it may be.
Yeah, doesn't have to be much for kids. They
No,
love
it
anything.
doesn't, you
Doesn't
know.
matter to them.
Or they
But-
just like the recognition,
Yeah.
you know, that you
Yeah.
that
So
we
it,
mentioned.
and if I'm remembering right, it was actually a boxed
It's
game.
actually a box. I started to bring it today, but it's a box, and it has different little games. It has like a stopwatch in there, and little signs that says stop and go, and talks about different behaviors. And it's got some real simple little sheets in there that will have different behaviors of where the teacher 3 times in a day, in a classroom day, then they're going to stop, and they're just going to count how many times that Stevie was disruptive, or X number of children, and it may require some assistance there of counting that. And then that gives them a baseline data to know how many times they're being disruptive, you know.
Well, and that makes a difference for the other children and for the teacher too, when you're trying to teach something and they're learning and to be disruptive.
And the other children, see, also help to modify that behavior too.
Okay.
So, you know, when once again we were mentioning those rewards, you know, then as a team you are hopefully working together on that. So it was a good good game.
All right, we've got a few minutes to talk about something new and different, or something that you're doing that that United Way can work with you or will work with you on.
The one thing I wanted to mention about the no bullying, that we've sort of gone in one other direction on that, was we started working with our foster parents and adoptive parents. So about, I think, a year ago, we wrote another emerging needs grant for presenting no bullying information for our foster parents. And we did a mini camp for foster parents. We had 20 foster parents and 25 foster care and adoptive kids throughout the district. And it was just really a good workshop.
How wonderful. So you brought them all together, and I think anytime you get that many parents and children together, you really feel like you've accomplished something. Right. And I'm sure they appreciated it, because sometimes they're the forgotten ones. Right. in our entire system, and yet I'm sure they have some extra problem areas that
most
maybe
definitely,
we don't
because
think
they
about.
are coming from different family backgrounds and
Yeah.
problems. The last issue that we're working with United Way on is our Success by Six, which you're very involved
yes,
with.
Yes, we have taken a look at that and hope within the next year or so to make some decisions and some priorities on where we go with it. And basically, it's exactly what it says, Success by Six.
Right. We've the Family Resource Centers have offered some classes, information. You and I before were talking about, I think, Cape Girardeau, you mentioned, was
Yes,
the
they
closest
have theirs.
one,
Mm-hmm.
and then Louisville has one.
Yeah,
and
they
that's
do
where a
in
lot of our
Lexington.
training
Mm-hmm.
information has come from.
Well, we are looking, and that'll be food for another program. And as we wrap up here, is there anything else that you'd like to say about your
We just
program?
appreciate the United Way and all that they have done for us, as in, once again, the city, the county, and the faith-based school. It's really a combination of all of it.
It's community.
Yes,
that's
it is.
Basically what it is, and that's what United Way is moving towards, and wanting to involve more people than just one little segment of folks, because we've got to start with our children, and you all do a super job. My hat's off to all the family resource workers.
Well, we all appreciate
in
that.
the school systems everywhere, because you have a monumental task and you're doing a good job, and United Way is very glad to be a part of it and work with you all in helping fund something that you don't have the money yourselves
That's
to
right,
fund.
because the funding is very tight.
Yes, it is.
The Family Resource operates off of grants. So.
Yes, and well, we have about a minute to wrap up, so Stephen, keep up the good work
Thank you.
and keep bringing in the good behavior and the no bullying and all of that, and we'll make it available to as many folks as would like to be involved in it. And maybe in some small way we can all work together and prevent some of the very serious problems that we could have in our community.
Sure, we could.
in
And
our
hopefully
schools.
encourage all the other community agencies to apply, to meet the needs that we've just identified.
Oh, yes, because there's more needs than you all can meet in just this limited way, but yet the scope of it seems to be going further and further. So thank you, Stephen, for
Thank you,
coming on and being a part of it, and thank you for what you do in our community.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us for United Way Community Connections with Stephen Bradley, Family Resource Worker from McNabb. Thank you, Stephen.